most New Year's resolutions about? The broad category is health. And that includes exercise, but far and away the most resolutions deal with diet and with weight loss. And weight loss is perhaps the most notorious of New Year's resolutions. So I expect that people are watching this episode with some particular interest. And without being a dietitian or an expert in weight loss, I'd like to reframe the categories here for you based on the life of Jesus, to give you categories from his own life that may prove helpful for you as a Christian on this topic. First, and this may be a surprise, Jesus feasted and assumed that his followers would feast. Jesus was a first century Jew. The nation's life turned on 3 feasts. He was at the wedding feast at Cana, at a feast with Levi, and Jesus assumes his disciples will feast too. He says in Luke 14, when you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed by your Father in heaven. So Jesus assumed his followers also, like him, would feast. But he also warned about feasting. He tells a parable in Luke 16 about a rich man, he says, who feasted sumptuously every day and ended up in Hades. So Jesus feasted himself, assumed we would, and warned us also about our feasting. But second, Jesus also fasted himself and assumed that his followers would fast. We know about Jesus' 40-day fast in the wilderness. Jesus, as a first century Jew, would have fasted annually on the Day of Atonement and other days and spontaneous occasions. And Jesus says about his followers in Matthew 6, he says, when they will fast, and then again in Matthew 9, they will fast. Without commanding his followers to fast, he says they will. He assumes that we will. And just like with feasting, Jesus also warned about fasting. In Luke chapter 18, he tells the parable of the tax collector and the Pharisee bragged that I fast twice a week. And Jesus said it was the Pharisee who did not go down to his house justified, but condemned. So Jesus himself fasted and feasted and assumed his followers would too. But here's the main thing. Jesus assumed and prayed that we would exercise moderation on a daily basis. And the reason I say that is because of the Lord's Prayer. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 11, he says, give us this day our daily bread. Far and away, most days for Jesus and for us are daily bread days. There is a moderative middle. There is the everyday moderation in which we walk. And there's fuzzy bounds to this moderation, but there's an everyday pattern of prayer and of receiving God's gifts in moderation. And this is a particular challenge in modern life where food is so readily available. And so many feast daily and draw us into their daily feasts. And it takes some countercultural moxie not to feast daily, but to pray for and live in light of daily bread. So what sort of resolutions, given Jesus's categories, what sort of resolutions might you make for a new year or some juncture in your life? For one, you might resolve to really pray and look for and try to exercise self-control in seeking daily bread. Not just pray through the Lord's Prayer as some vague request that God would give us food however much, but you would think about everyday moderation. You'd wake up expecting that, go to the dinner table expecting that, asking God for it to provide daily bread, and then seeking self-control to live within those fuzzy bounds, but real bounds, of what is daily bread and daily nourishment that God provides. You might also resolve related to fasting. So few modern people fast, especially for spiritual purposes. And perhaps this powerful tool given to us by God is going unused in your life, and you might resolve, I want to make good on this. God gave us this for good purposes in our life. It's a way of amplifying our prayers to God in particularly desperate moments. The nature of fasting is you cannot go without food all the time. You only get so often to pray with the special desperation that fasting accompanies. And so as you come to moments in life, reach for that help, for that God-given tool to express special desperation. There's everyday need and there are special needs. And so one way that you might pursue that is taking a meal once a week to work up your metabolic flexibility on fasting. Take the time that you would be eating once a week and give that to Bible study, to prayer, to doing good for someone else as an act of service, to build in fasting and remind yourself about fasting. You might also pick the first day of the month. You fast a meal for the first day of the month to thank God for his grace in the previous month, to ask for his help going forward, to resolve in some way to make use of the powerful tool of fasting like so few modern people do. You might also resolve to keep feasting in its place, and in the end, enjoy feasting all the more because you're not feasting daily, but when there is really a holiday, really a celebratory occasion with friends and family, that would be a time to enjoy the feast, to stretch the appetite. You might resolve, I'm not going to get second helpings unless it's a feast. And on a special day, on a feast day with friends and family, then I'll enjoy the goodness, enjoy God's grace given to us in a feast. And maybe I can just say one thing about drinking, eating and drinking. In modern life, we have so many calorie-rich, sugar-rich drinks that so often we mindlessly drink so many calories without hardly thinking about it. And you might want to resolve to drink more water, to embrace the daily bread mentality by being more careful about your beverage selections and drinking more water that can have an overall benefit on your health, help you spiritually, help you physically. So embrace the reality of daily bread. Make use of God's good gift of fasting. Enjoy feasting in its proper times and its proper bounds, enjoying the goodness of God and the gifts he has given. And seek to live through daily bread, feasting and fasting, God's amazing banner in 1 Corinthians 10:31. Whether you eat or whether you drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God.